This event is being recorded so that we can actually share it on our website afterwards for anyone who wasn't able to join us. So with that being said, we are recording. I will start sharing my screen here after I get a chance to introduce everyone that's with us. I'm Melody Malure. I am the city's communications coordinator. I'm just going to kind of MC and manage things from the back end. I won't be the person you hear from that much tonight. Also on the call with me, who you can't see his face, but you can imagine it, is Brian Heaston. He's one of our engineers with the city of Bozeman. We also have Mitch Reister, who is the Public Works Director for the city of Bozeman. He's waving his hand high. And then we have Corey Llewellyn with the Forest Service, Custer Gallatin Forest Service. And joining him from the Forest Service, I also have Marna Daly and Melanie Coda. Thanks everyone for being here. I will probably have my panelists who are from the Forest Service actually turn their video cameras off while we present. You're going to be hearing from the city folks for today, but you will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end, and our friends at the Forest Service are here in case any of those questions are better answered by them. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen again. And I'll give it a couple of moments here just to make sure that everyone can see my screen. I have a couple of buddies who are out there watching right now, and I know they will let me know if we run into any technical issues. But in the meantime, I just want to say thanks to all who are joining us virtually. Life in the virtual world of open houses is sometimes rife with technological difficulties, so I appreciate you bearing with us in case anything comes up tonight. Okay, so I am going to get us started, and I'm just going to do a brief run through of what we're going to cover today. So I just went through our welcome and introductions. Again, thank you to all who are listening from wherever you are, as well as those from the city and the Forest Service who are here to help answer questions and provide a little bit of background about the Sourdough Fuels Reduction project, as well as the larger Bozeman Municipal Watershed project. Our evening is going to be divided up into 3 parts. The first part is going to be an educational presentation, a little bit of information about the Bozeman Municipal Watershed project, why it's important, the types of forest fuels reduction work that will be done, and specifically you're going to hear from the city as it relates to a portion of the work called the Sourdough Fuels Reduction portion. So that's why you're going to hear mostly from city folks in the presentation today. Then we're going to talk about an opportunity for community engagement that will be open over the next 10 days, where we'll go over 3 options for recreational access in the Sourdough Trailhead area during a portion of the city's work in that area. And then lastly, we will actually just do a Q&A. So as questions come in from folks, if they make sense, I'll try to insert them as folks are talking, but we'll have the remainder of the time to answer any questions that might have come up. So with that being said, I'll take just a pause here. Looks like everyone on my team is ready to go. And I am going to turn it over to Mitch Reister, our Public Works Director for the City of Bozeman.
All right, thanks, Melody. Yes, we're talking about the overall Bozeman Municipal Watershed project, which is a cooperative effort between the U.S. Forest Service and the City of Bozeman. The City of Bozeman's portion is known as the Sourdough Fuels Reduction, and we'll go into the scale of what both those projects are. We're trying to do them both in concert, essentially to reduce wildfire fuels in our main drinking watershed. So 80% of our water for the City of Bozeman comes from the Highlight and Sourdough watersheds. Our work as the city will just be limited to the Sourdough watershed with this project. The overall goal, again, to protect our drinking water supply and to support forest health in what we know is one of our busiest recreation areas. So back in the early 2000s, some studies were completed. In 2003, the Forest Service risk assessment was completed. The city's source water protection plan was done in 2004, and then the Sourdough Creek watershed assessment was also done in 2004. And what these studies revealed was that a catastrophic wildfire in the Bozeman Municipal Watershed could have some pretty dramatic impacts on our water facilities. And what we're talking about there is very, very hot, very catastrophic wildfires, not ground fires, but entire canopy forest killing type of fires. What those can end up doing, so there's a number of different questions with that and how that affects us. The debris from the wildfire obviously is a huge issue, but the post-fire considerations are really more dramatic for the city's water treatment plant, in that fires that release that intense heat actually cauterize the ground and sterilize it. And so when we get rain events after that, when ground cover is totally eliminated, we start seeing landslides, mud flows, a lot of things that can go into, in this case, Sourdough Creek, not only plug our intakes, damage the intakes, wash out roads, but really detrimentally affect the ability for the treatment plant to treat that water. So in this partnership, which we started mid-2000s, shortly after these studies were completed, the key objectives were obviously to maintain a high quality, predictable water supply and implement sustainable land use practices. And we're going to work together to optimize our resources and lessen the community impact, which is one of the reasons why we're here talking with you tonight. As far as on the environmental review side, there we go. It is a big file for sure. So we've basically got three components to that. Two of them are underway, and one of them was already completed. What's underway right now is with the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. We have our MEPA, or Montana Environmental Policy Act, environmental work, and that's for the decision for the state to award the $270,000 grant funds for the city project, and that's required by state law. What has already been completed was the Forest Service's environmental impact statement under the National Environmental Policy Act, which included our project under the cumulative effects analysis. And then we're currently undergoing Endangered Species Act compliance with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We considered there to be a federal nexus with the DNRC grant funds, and so we initiated this. The city consultation is going to include a biological opinion and incidental take statement for grizzly bear and letter concurrence for lynx.
Thanks, Mitch.
I think I think I'm still going though. I'll keep going. So just as an overview, and Brian Heaston will get into a lot more detail on this, but this is basically a snapshot of the overall area. What you can see in the red are the fires that have occurred in the area in the last 50 years. The areas that are circled in blue are the two watersheds in question, which feed, again, 80% of our total water resource for the city of Bozeman. And then you can actually see the orange squares. That's the city's overall proposed project area. That's about 380 acres, although we won't be treating all that with this project. We'll only be treating about 138 acres. The Forest Service is the yellow, and that includes over 2,000 acres of fuels treatment in this area. With that, I believe I turn it over to Mr. Heaston.
Thanks, Mitch. Good evening, everyone. This is Brian Heaston. I'm City of Bozeman Project Manager here for the Sourdough Fuel Reduction Project. Also serve as the city's Senior Water Resources Engineer. So getting a little, drilling down a little bit further into the spatial context here of the project. As Mitch described, the overall Bozeman Municipal Watershed project is comprised of two major efforts. The first by the Forest Service, their treatment area is shown in yellow there. The other by the city of Bozeman, with our general project boundary depicted in orange. Also shown here on the map are the city of Bozeman's municipal water supply intakes. The blue square there within the orange hatched area is our Sourdough water supply intake. The intake further to the west is on the Highlight Creek source. And to give a little context for proximity here to our treatment plant, the polygon that's kind of accented in magenta there, it looks like a boot just to the north of the trailhead. That's the location of our water treatment plant. So this gives an overall feel of what the magnitude or the extent of the project work is, and how that relates to the critical infrastructure that we need to protect here with this project. So zooming in a bit further, this is the 380 acre project area of City of Bozeman owned lands. Apologies for the massive information here on the exhibit. I'll try to step through it here slowly. We've chunked the project out into 3 main phases. Phase 1 is focusing on ground-based fuels treatment area. We're looking at 6 to 8 weeks to accomplish the work, aiming to begin toward the beginning of this summer, 2021. The gray area there on the map is the location of where this phase 1 work will be done. It's approximately 16 acres in size. And it's mature timber, and the prescription for the fuels removal calls for up to 70% of the fuels being removed within that particular area. Phase 2 of the project calls for helicopter treatments, and those helicopter treatment areas are shown in the kind of brighter green polygons that are scattered throughout the project area itself. We're looking to get that work underway here sometime this fall of 2021. The overall length of time for that helicopter work is around 6 to 8 weeks as well. And with a particular component or phase within this helicopter treatment work, there will be partial disruption to the public use of Sourdough Canyon Trail. Reason being the helicopter treatment areas that you see on the east side of the parcel of the property, upslope of the trail itself. The timber that's going to be removed within those areas will be flown by helicopter over the trail itself. And that timber needs to be hauled out the Sourdough Canyon Trail Road. So there's significant concern for public safety while that operation is occurring. So while the helicopter contractor is in conducting that work on the east side, generally of the drainage, it's when when the disruption to the public use of the trail will be occurring itself. The total area there for the phase 2 helicopter treatment acreage is about 61 acres, calling for a similar prescription for removal of roughly 70% of the fuels within those areas. Phase 3 of the project is subsequent here to this particular year. We're anticipating that work to begin summer, fall of 2022. That phase 3 work calls for hand crew treatment. So hand crews will, ground crews will walk into the phase 3 area depicted with the orange kind of striped hatch there to clean up ladder fuels that are within those areas, as well as treat the dead and downed timber in those locations as well. That phase 3 acreage is about 61 acres there itself. The remainder of the project boundary that you see here that's in the lighter colored green, that will be future phase work calling for similar hand crew treatment to get in there and remove ladder fuels and dead and down timber. We don't have a time frame on that yet, but think that's going to happen sometime subsequent to 2022. So how is this work going to affect the community? So a few things to keep in mind here. I mean, this is a commercial activity where there's going to be, log trucks, commercial fuels removal equipment in and around the Sourdough drainage and the roadways of the area. Helicopters will be used for a good portion of the fuels treatment areas there, so you can expect to see a helicopter flying around within the drainage itself while that work is being conducted, and then again when the logs are being flown over the trail itself and log trucks have to haul out Sourdough Canyon Trail, there will be disruption to the public use of the trail. And then while the ground crew activity is taking place, can expect to see the crews, chainsaws, hand equipment, working to remove that ladder fuel and treat the dead and down timber.
Great. Thanks, Brian and Mitch. It's my turn to talk for a little bit now. So all of you should see on your screen 3 different options. And Brian did a great job talking us through those phases of work that will be happening in this project area, the Sourdough Fuels Reduction project area. And as you saw on the map, right at the very sort of north end of the project area is the Sourdough Trailhead. If you are a recreator in the Bozeman area, you're probably familiar with this trailhead. And as Brian talked about, this is an important project for us. It's important to maintain our water quality and predictability. But as we're doing this work, there's an equal importance of making sure that everyone is safe, especially in phase 2 when we're doing that helicopter work. However, because this is such an important area for those who recreate in the Bozeman community, we want to make sure that we're not just shutting access down, because we want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to actually still get in and hopefully recreate as they would like. So as a part of that, we'd like to ask for your input to engage with us on how you would prefer to access the Sourdough Trailhead area. And that's the area that will be impacted by that helicopter activity during the highest impact of that work. And so you'll see here that the options actually list how long each option might take for that work to be completed. And you'll notice, if you recall back to how long phase 2, the helicopter phase, actually takes, the whole phase is about 6 to 8 weeks. And so not all of the phase will you actually only have this limited access, which is great. So I'm just going to talk us through the 3 options for access that we'll actually have you give input on over the next 10 days. And there will be just a simple survey link for you to actually share that input, which I will throw in the chat as soon as I'm done talking. So option 1 is partial public access for 4 weeks. So 4 weeks, you'll be able to access the trailhead area only after 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, full public access. Option 2 is limited public access that will take 5 weeks for the work to be complete. You'll have no access Monday through Thursday, so none of that after work hours access. However, you gain an extra day of full public access, so full public access will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then the last option, if you were wondering how quickly we could get this part of the work done if we just shut down public access, that would be no public access for 3 weeks. So full closure. So no one would be able to be in there because we would have those helicopter work activities being done for that full 3 weeks. So those are the 3 options. So you can kind of evaluate them for yourself. You can look at, how long it might take for that option to complete the amount of work. You can assess the type of access that you would have. And then what I'll have you do, and for those of you watching, you just wait 1 second, I'm going to drop it in the chat. But you can also go to bznwatershed.com and click on a little green button that says engagement opportunities right on the very front of our website. And you can actually vote through that too. You need to go click on the little toggle to turn the survey on. So if you go right now, you might not be able to do it, but you'll be able to access it in about 2 minutes. So those are the 3 options for us to gather some input from you on how you would like to access the Sourdough Trailhead area during a portion of the phase 2 work. And so that's for only a portion. And we're going to have this survey open for 10 days, and we will implement whichever option has the broadest support. So we hope that you will share this survey out with folks. We hope that you will gather as much information as you can from us today, and then give us your input. So along those lines, we want to make sure that we're closing the feedback loop here as we do this engagement opportunity with everyone. So we'll have you go to bznwatershed.com here in a couple of minutes and pick your preferred option. I'll also drop the link here in the chat. And that link will be available for the next 10 days, so March 25th to April 5th. So if you need a little time to think, or if you want to share it with someone, you can certainly do that over the next 10 days. We will report back to you at a virtual open house on Thursday, April 8th, so 2 weeks from today, to share the results of what we've heard, what choice and option will be implemented, and any next steps. So with that, I'm just going to turn this last slide over to Mitch. I'm going to let him sort of wrap things up as I go get that survey link live and drop it in the chat for everyone.
Thanks, Melody. Yeah, again, very important project for the city of Bozeman for our water supply. We definitely want to understand what impacts you might have in recreating and what we can do to the best of our abilities to address those. We've come up with 3 options that still keep the project moving forward, but also try to take into consideration, what people prefer as far as their recreational activities during those weeks when there is a hazard to the public and we'll need to limit trail use. It also bears mentioning that the Forest Service, their project, which is in concert with ours, will be going as well. So there's going to be a lot of coordination between Sourdough, Highlight, and the various trail systems in there. And so the bznwatershed.com is a great place to keep up to speed. It's a joint website between the Forest Service and the city to try to get that information out. We've got much more outreach to do on that as things get going, but we really want your feedback. And we definitely appreciate your time here tonight. And if you have questions, the rest of our panel will do our best to answer those in the time that we have. Please use the Q&A function, and Melody will be looking at those questions and sending those out to us live. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. I just put the link to the survey in our chat. So if you're using WebEx on your computer or on your phone, you can actually go straight to that survey link right now from the chat. It is also now live if you go to bznwatershed.com and click on the little green button that says engagement opportunities. It should take you right to a section that will also have that link. I do see a couple of questions that have rolled in here over the last few minutes. I'm just pulling them up. And I think this first one is going to be a good question for Brian first, and then Mitch, if you want to add anything. This question's from Barbara. She asks, if 70% of timber will be removed, how much effort is being taken to keep this a wild and scenic looking area and not look like a clear cutting style logging operation? Great question, Barbara. Brian, do you want to answer that first? And then Mitch, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that. So good question, Barbara. The nature of the prescription itself, a couple of things to point out. First, that the layout of the project was prepared by a professional forester that's under contract for the city of Bozeman. And again, primary purpose of the project is to reduce fire risk and enhance our infrastructure protection for that critical drinking water supply. But that comes with a balance, balancing the aesthetic look of the post project, as well as giving consideration to the view shed as seen from Sourdough Canyon Trail itself. So the nature of the prescription is not a clear cut. It's not what you would typically envision, having hard lines that you look up to the hill within that project zone or that treatment zone. Groups of trees will be removed, but groups of trees will remain within that treatment area. And along the boundary, the treatment unit itself, that's going to be the removal of trees has been specifically identified to kind of feather that treatment boundary into the remaining stand of timber that's adjacent to it. So we are putting a lot of consideration here into the aesthetic value the area, and our professional forester has put a lot of thought how this is going to look when it's all said and done.
Thanks, Brian. I think that answered the question. Mitch, did you have anything you wanted to add before I move on to the next question?
I think Brian pretty much covered it. I will mention that, we looked at several different prescriptions when we were developing the project. And one of them had, we determined had more aesthetic impacts than we were comfortable with, and we knew the community would be comfortable with. And so we actually went with the more selective harvest option, which is actually considerably more expensive. But given the value of the watershed, not only to our water supply, but for recreation, we determined that was a very reasonable cost.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks, Barbara, for that question. So I'm going to have my Forest Service folks turn their cameras on, because I think this next answer is going to be a little bit of a joint answer. So I'm probably going to send it over to Corey first, and then if we need to add anything from the city side, we will. But Terry has a question. His question is, when you limit or close public access to Sourdough, how do you plan to address the Mosier Creek route? It seems as if you'd need to close Mosier at some point. It's a good question, Terry. Corey, do you feel comfortable answering that to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Terry. Thank you. So you are correct. Part of the concern, as the city has discussed, is really public safety during the operations there on the city of Bozeman land. And so, of course, that includes access up the trail and then access down the trail from the upper part of the drainage. And so at this point, we are looking at some type of a closure on the main Sourdough Trail, but we would keep the Mosier Trail open. Actually, part of our design criteria in our NEPA is that we would not have a Mosier closure and a Sourdough closure at the same time. And so the closure would probably, location-wise, would be where the trail crosses Bozeman Creek. And so that the public and the public would still have access to go up and over Mosier and to still get to Mystic Lake, if that answers your question. So yes, there will be a closure on the Forest Service side to prevent access from coming down into the city of Bozeman, but Mosier would stay open, including access into Mystic Lake.
Thanks, Corey. I think that answers it from our side too, unless I don't see Mitch seeming like he wants to jump in there. If we didn't fully answer your question, Terry, you can go ahead and throw another question if you have a follow-up. I think this next question, I know that our Forest Service friends know about this, so my guess is it's for you guys. It's about the trees that are marked in the Forest Service area above the Kirkhill trails. So Barbara asks, does this operation include those trees that are marked in the Forest Service area above Kirkhill trails?
Yeah, I'll take that one too. Great question. And in regard to the overall purpose and need of the field reduction project, we, the Forest Service and the city, are implementing fuel reduction efforts together. However, the city of Bozeman operations that they're talking about today, the city is not overseeing the treatment over on National Forest above Kirk Hill. Those are fuel reduction treatments similar to what the city has discussed this evening. However, those will be implemented and administered by the Forest Service as part of the bigger picture of the BMW project.
Thanks, Corey. Okay, Jerry has a question here that I'm going to throw out to everyone. And I don't know who would like to answer this, so I'm going to ask Jerry's question, and then I'll look to my panelists to see if there's one person in particular who wants to take a first go at answering. Jerry says, if you are going to create artificial meadows in a patchwork, and maybe that's something we need a little clarification on too, what are you going to do to control the proliferation of unauthorized mountain bike trails? Is there someone here who wants to answer, take a first go at that? Looking at Brian and Corey. Corey's nodding. You want to start, Corey, and then if Brian, you want to add something, you can feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I'll dive in. And once again, great question. You know, unauthorized trails and not just mountain bike trails, but all trails in general is certainly a concern that we have throughout the greater Bozeman area and definitely within the project area of BMW. And so currently, even without implementing the project, we do have unauthorized or illegal user-created trails, and we try to enforce closures on those. We try to reach out and have public outreach and education that those are illegal trails. When we see resource damage occurring, we try to take action to minimize those impacts and to close the trail. And so that'll be a similar effort within the BMW project area. If we see increase user-created trails or off-road routes being developed in the thinned areas, then we will take appropriate action to try to minimize and prevent those from continuing to occur. We don't have, in regard to your question, like patchwork, we don't really have any. That's not really the purpose and need, is to generate meadows or create meadow. We will be opening up the stand, of course, and opening up the canopy spacing, but we don't plan on generating meadows. Just to help answer that part of the question. But yeah, great question. Unauthorized use is certainly a concern. It's something that we'll have to track as we implement the project. And that's, of course, regarding the National Forest side.
Yeah, and I'll jump in to address the city of Bozeman side of this. I'd echo what Corey says. I mean, we do have concern about unauthorized use of trails and resource damage. Those are a vector for sedimentation, into the creek, and we do have concerns about that on top of the resource damage itself. If those trails were to originate on forest land and wind themselves through city land, then there would be a cooperative effort to tackle, the closure or the destruction of that trail, rehabilitation of that trail on either end. The portion on the city property we would tackle ourselves, and likewise on the forest side. But there is coordination that would occur there, and on the coordination side, the city and the forest get together once a week to talk about this project. So there's ample opportunity to be able to address any unauthorized trail concerns as they arise.
Thanks everyone who has been sending out the questions. It looks like we do have a couple more that are trickling in. I just want to take this opportunity as we kind of encourage you again to keep sending out your questions, to let you know that that survey is live. You can find it. I put the link in the chat, but if you're just calling in or you can't access your chat right now, you can also go to bznwatershed.com, and the survey link is there. If you click on the little green button that says engagement opportunities, it'll take you right to a location where that survey is. It looks like I already have 7 people who have responded. And like I said in our presentation, this will be open for the next 10 days. So don't feel like you have to respond right away. You can always respond over the next week or so. And you're also able to share this link out with folks. When this recording is done, we will actually put it up on our website next tomorrow, Friday. And then you can send it to friends. You can watch the presentation over again and make sure that everyone has the same information to work from. Looks like we have another question that came in from Joan and Cliff. And I know that this is something we've talked about. The diaper line, affectionately named the diaper line, clear-cut feathering of the old Burlington Northern clear cuts closed the canyon for recreation all summer. Much easier, but that was just after the canyon was open to the public after being off limits for 30+ years to protect the water. So it's not a question per se, but it is a good commentary. And I know that as Brian mentioned and Mitch mentioned when we were talking about the different ways that we're going to be doing this prescription, I know that we're going to be not doing something that will remind you of the diaper line. I don't think Brian or Mitch don't have a response to that, do you?
I'll chime in here a little bit. You know, affectionately or notoriously, I mean, I guess it depends on your perspective there on the diaper line, but that's an interesting thing to note, Joan. The historical closure of the watershed itself. I think that's something that not a lot of members of the community know about or continue to have memory of. For many years, Sourdough Canyon Trail was off limits to the public. Nobody was allowed in there, and that was a measure that was set forth to protect the quality of the water supply. That was back in the days when that water was, you know, just diverted through an intake, and very little treatment was done on that source water before it was you know, put into the distribution piping to arrive at customers' homes here in the city. So you know, a lot has changed since then. You know, we have a more advanced treatment plant. We're more sensitive to the use of this area. It is highly endeared, one of the more heavily recreated you know, locations in the Bozeman area. We want to do everything we can to try to limit, you know, those recreational impacts, which is, you know, good portion of why we're here tonight.
That's right. Thanks, Brian. So I know that the question that just came up here is one that we do have an answer to, and I think Brian can really generally set it out. I think that's probably the easiest way. So Linda's question is about specifically this engagement opportunity between the three options. And she asks, what is the cost difference between the three options? And Brian, maybe you just want to say sort of this one costs the most, this one costs the least.
Yeah, I'll speak in relative terms with respect to cost, because we don't have hard numbers here at this point. The longer the activity goes on for, in other words, the longer that the closure lasts, the longer, pardon me, the longer amount of time it takes the helicopter operator to complete the project, the more expensive the work is going to become. So if you look at the options with their relative timeframes, the one with the shortest amount of time with respect to the closure would reflect the least cost, and so on and so forth as you move up those three options.
Thanks, Brian. So we have, we're scheduled to be here from 5:30 to 7. There's a possibility we won't need to use all of that time here tonight. So I'm just going to take one moment here to let everyone know that we'll stay on for a little bit longer. We'll keep answering your questions. And then, of course, use the website bznwatershed.com to stay up to date with all of the latest information on this overall Bozeman Municipal Watershed project, elements that we've talked about here today related to the Sourdough Fuels Reduction project that the city is leading, as well as future engagement opportunities. Like I mentioned earlier, we will be back here same time same place, quote unquote, 2 weeks from now, April 8th at 5:30 on WebEx to talk about what we heard from these survey results, what option has been selected by the broadest response from the community, and then what those next steps really look like. So if you are busy cooking dinner or you have another thing to head over to, feel free to do so. But if you have other questions, we'll try our best to stay on for a little longer. As long as those questions are coming in, we'll try our best to answer them. But otherwise, just make sure you have that website bookmarked or saved for future. And this whole presentation will be available on there starting tomorrow once I get it up there. Okay, it looks like Chelsea has a question. Oh, I know Chelsea, so I know that she has some really detailed understanding of some of this work. So my guess is that she's going to probably get a pretty high level answer. Her question is, could 70% reduction in fuel negatively affect sediment stability if there were to be increasing events of rainfall in the summer months, or was this considered in the preliminary research? I think that's probably a Brian question, but Mitch, if you're rearing to answer something, I'll let you take first stab at it.
Yeah, I'll take first stab at it. Had to deal with this in other parts of the country quite a bit. So the 70% reduction is the mature trees actually. So there isn't going to be a complete removal of 70% of the vegetation, and so root condition is something that's really important for erosion prevention and soil stability. I do believe, I didn't get into the studies, 15, 16 years ago, but having dealt with this elsewhere, I'm pretty sure that was covered. Pretty common issue. So you want to keep a reasonable spacing of the trees. So we're basically trying to have the trees far enough apart that they don't actually ignite the crown into a crown fire, which can be very devastating. And in that case, then it basically destroys the soil matrix as well. So there's still going to be plenty of smaller vegetation, brush. What we're trying to deal with is a lot of the dead and down trees, some of the ladder fuels that are the heavier brush that have grown to a height of where if they catch on fire on the bottom of those are going to immediately translate up into the canopy of the mature forest. So my consideration on that is that this won't have, there might be some immediate sedimentation issues that people have to look at, but that's part of our groundwork to make sure that we do some good scatter there. And there's ways to mitigate that, but long term or even in the immediate shorter term, I don't foresee that we'll have an issue with the soil erosion.
Thanks, Mitch. I am seeing a question that came in here that I want to answer just to make sure that if anyone else has this burning question out there, I get it. Catherine asks, just for the purposes of the survey, if we could remind what month this treatment and subsequent closure would be taking place. That's really good context. I should have talked about that. So phase 2, which is that phase where we expect to do the helicopter work and that this partial closure will take place, partial or full closure, depending on what people pick. Is it anticipated to happen this fall, Catherine? So fall of 2021. Of course, there's all kinds of weather constraints and things that might change that, but it's phase 2. If phase 1 starts in the summer, we would hope and expect to see phase 2 happening this fall. I can't give you an exact month, but I think that generally you can be thinking of the fall months. And then I also just want to point out, Linda, I got to scroll my little thing up here, had a question or just wanted to make a comment about sort of adding in some pricing or cost constraints to the 3 questions. And we did think about that, but I want to just confirm here with Mitch and Brian that the cost difference is sort of relatively manageable no matter what. And I just want to hear from you guys sort of why we didn't put the cost on there, just because what's more important is access and what people need, right?
Yeah, so we'll be able to handle the cost difference, or we should be able to handle it. I mean, we don't have the actual numbers in here yet, but to directly address the question, Linda, we're not talking about cost differences between the option on the order of $1 million. Absolutely not. This is going to be in the high tens of thousands to low hundred thousands difference between the options there in the cost.
But I do hear your feedback, Linda, and if possible, the nice thing about the survey that we're using is that I can actually edit it in real time. So tomorrow, maybe we'll get a chance to look and see if we can add a little bit more context there, knowing that it's all, like Brian said, all pretty reasonable, and there's no big, huge differences between the options. Okay, I am just sort of looking through our questions. It looks like we are doing a good job of getting through them. I'll remind you that we are here for as long as you guys have questions or until 7 o'clock. And I will just sort of be quiet for a little bit and see if any other questions come in. Okay, I'm going to give everyone a couple more minutes just in case you haven't yet located that Q&A function on WebEx. And if you feel like you might have a question in the future, but you don't have one right now, or you're trying to process the information you just learned, again, if you go to bznwatershed.com, I can't say it enough, go to our website. There's actually a little contact us button, and you can submit your questions there. Those actually get disseminated. You see here we have both the Forest Service and the city. And so if you submit a question or a comment on there, it'll actually be a way for us to divvy up your questions. If it's more Forest Service related, we'll make sure the Forest Service gets you an answer. If it's city related, we'll make sure the city gets you an answer there. All right, I'm going to bring us to a close unless anything comes in. I see we have some attendees who are starting to head out, which is usually my sign that folks are off to the rest of their evening. I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you to Mitch and Brian with the city for giving us a great presentation. I see one more question just came in. And then again, thank you to Corey, Marna, and Melanie. Barbara looks like she has a question. How will the trees be initially cut? With to their natural or with a lighter touch? How many new roads will be created and will they be recovered? Okay, and then I see Matt also has a question came in. Barbara's question, Corey, I know that you have an answer to that second part about how many new roads might be created and if they'll be recovered. I don't know if someone wants to answer the first part about how the trees might be cut, and then Corey wants to take the second one, or Corey, if you want to take both.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, Barbara, your comment might be, your question might be directed specifically to just the city of Bozeman treatment. So I guess I don't want to speak for them. As it relates to the Forest Service, we will not be building any permanent roads. All of our roads, temporary roads, will be constructed, but they will all be decommissioned and completely recontoured and obliterated back into the landscape when the project is completed. And then I think your question about how the trees are going to be cut. Yeah, so trees are going to be removed from a couple of different practices. There will be what we call a faller or feller with a chainsaw. They'll be falling trees, and then there'll be ground-based equipment or other forms of like skyline logging equipment, removing those logs to a road so they can be hauled out. And so that's generally how most of the logs are going to be removed. The trees are going to be removed. But again, I'm speaking directly to the Forest Service. So,
Brian or Mitch, anything different on our side for that question?
No, I'll address the road. There will be a temporary road to support the city project activities here. But as Corey said, it will be obliterated, recontoured upon the completion of the overall project activities. Not only will the city of Bozeman be utilizing the road here that will be installed on a temporary basis, but the Forest Service will as well. And I don't have the knowledge or experience to be able to touch the how will the trees be cut question.
Great, thanks. So Matt has a question. I'm pulling it up here. And this is a good question for Brian and Mitch. Can you talk more about any potential damage to the trail? So we're talking now about the Sourdough Trailhead area, Sourdough Trail, and what work might be done to restore if there's any damage being done there.
Yeah, so typical contract provision it will be included here in the project that will require the timber contractor to repair and rehabilitate any damage that is caused to the trail as caused by the prosecution of their work. So before the contract is closed out, we make sure that the trail is rehabbed to a like or similar condition to how it existed prior to the project being initiated.
Thanks, Brian. Let's see, Tia has a question and a comment, so I'll just say out here. She says Tia appreciates all of the work being done to protect the city's water supply, wants to know what can we as citizens do to help the effort. And so Tia, I'm just going to jump in and answer that one. My answer is what you can do specific to this project is to stay informed, be involved like you're currently being involved, and then spread the message. Share with folks the survey that is out, let them know how they can be involved in this process, and let them know where they can find more information. As we get into the summer and we start to see some more activity, friends, colleagues, family might have questions they might not have heard yet about the project. And so we would really appreciate anyone who is able to help share out information to please do that. Okay, I see some more questions coming in here. So 2 questions about the Forest Service plan link, and that is all on the BZN Watershed website. So if you go to bznwatershed.com, there is a section on the top part of the website that says project documents. And there's also a really general timeline there too. If you, we will continue to add to that website, continue to add to that timeline as it gets more detailed and implementation details are more set. There is a question here that is way more detailed than I know from Tom. And I think maybe Brian will know the answer to this. He says, has the stumpage been sold at this point? Is there a contract in place?
No, the stumpage has not been sold and there are no contracts in place at this point. Phase 1 work contract, we hope to advertise here in the month of April, but it is not yet complete. So it will be coming out soon, but it's not out the door at this point.
Okay, just shows what you don't know about projects like this, because that was a question I did not have any clue what that meant. Thank you, Tom. And thanks, Brian, for being our knowledgeable resource here.
Yeah, and if I could circle back to Barbara's kind of follow-up with respect to the type of heavy machinery that the city may be that may be used on the city project. So the ground-based unit, Barbara, will use conventional ground-based logging equipment. So yarders, cat logging, heavy equipment of that nature.
Great. Okay, still taking questions if folks have any other questions that they want to drop in the Q&A. Somehow I lost my Q&A little box. So if anyone sees something come in that I'm not able to see right now, just go ahead and answer that if you feel the need to. Oh, I found it again. All right, not seeing any more questions coming in. I believe we did our best to try to get answers to everyone's questions. If I missed you for some reason, I apologize. I think I was able to track pretty much everyone. I'll give us one more minute here. Yeah, so the Forest Service plan and timeline, if you go over to bozemanwatershed.com and go up to the top where the project documents are, that'll get you to the really large Forest Service plan. That's the really detailed one. As far as a detailed implementation plan and timeline, I can ask Corey, Marna, or Melanie if you want to add a little bit of detail to that, just in terms of when we might see a little bit more information coming out on the website. I know that we have really general stuff out there right now.
Yeah, great question. So we will be providing some more information on our website in the very near future. We do have various different project elements under contract, and so we anticipate thinning operations to start, late spring, early summer. We don't anticipate logging operations to probably start until late summer, early fall. But we have some non-mechanical treatments planned in the Leverage Gulch area, kind of as soon as conditions allow this spring. And then it's a great opportunity to really share for those on still. We are expecting to do some prescribed fire in the highlight drainage. That is if we get the correct conditions and the right weather. And so as plans are starting to get shaped up for the summer, we will be updating the information on that website. And as Melody said, we really want to try to keep information up to date as much as we can, so it's always available to the public.
Okay, Cooper has a question. Will there be any operations during hunting season? Brian and Mitch, do you want to answer from the city side? And Corey, if you have anything you want to add after that, go ahead. But I'll turn it back to the city first.
Yeah, Cooper, there very well may be. We just don't have the exact window yet for when the helicopter work is going to be underway. Because that start date is going to set the window for the closure or the restricted access that we need to see on the project here. So it could very well extend into hunting season, but we just don't know yet.
Corey?
As it relates to the Forest Service, yes, we will have operations ongoing during the hunting season.
Good question. Thanks, Cooper. I think that's a good reminder for all of us on the call about all of the different audiences that we're trying to reach and to share information with. So using that website and then doing your best to try to tune in as we get more information out there, as timelines get a little bit more set, to make sure that if you might be impacted, whether or not you recreate, you hunt, however you use this area during the time of the work that's being going on. Thanks everyone for all of your great questions. Some really, really good feedback and questions here this evening. Again, I'm just going to call for questions every time I do it, and I think we're going to have no more questions. I get a few more. So if you have been waiting on a question, or if something has come up as a part of the discussion, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A function. And just as an update on that survey, thanks to everyone who has completed it already, it looks like we have 17 responses already, which is awesome. And hopefully we'll have a lot more over the course of the next 10 days. All right, I'm seeing a few more attendees starting to drop off, so I'll say this is your 1-minute warning. If you have any other questions, go ahead and put them out there, and we'll be happy to answer them. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining us, for participating in this virtual space. I know there's always a little bit of a learning curve sometimes, so thanks everyone. And thanks to all of our panelists for joining us this evening. We are excited to continue this engagement effort. I hope that we either see you back here on April 8th to hear the outcome of the survey, or at least tune into the website to get the update that way as well. So with that, I will close us out here, and everyone have a great rest of your Thursday evening. Be safe and well. Thanks all.